for us to look at structural and non-structural means at actually, working to, first of all, arrest the development of these risks, and further then to actually start reversing these aspects. So it's very important for us to start working together in all forms of government when we look at these issues. For instance, when we look at the work that the National Centre is doing with the Department of the Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, that the issues pertaining to, for instance, desertification, the issues pertaining in land use management, and all of these kind of things contribute ultimately in projects that actually work to reverse these aspects. I think it's also important for us to recognize, and there was a question on early warning systems, that the National Centre, together with the South African Weather Bureau, or the Weather Service, has actually developed what we call the impact-based early warning system. And what it essentially entails is to take early warning weather information and to provide that early warning information to communities in various forms. We saw, for instance, during the KZN floods, that these early warning systems were utilized in order to warn individuals that severe weather is coming, that there may be flooding in certain areas. And ultimately, the idea is that individuals are better prepared in order for them to understand what the impact of the weather would be, rather than just saying that there would be severe rain, for instance. That is work that is ongoing, and the network of how this early warnings is essentially disseminated is improving on an ongoing basis. I think the principal point that was also mentioned about how do we deal with minimizing disasters, we have to understand that it's a function of a number of things, dealing with the hazards and understanding the functional component of the actual hazard, like flood, like veld fires and those things, dealing with the vulnerability, in other words, how the different communities are actually exposed to a particular event, and then also chairperson, in terms of the capacity of a community to actually deal with these issues. There was an issue mentioned by the chairperson, for instance, on the capacity of our disaster management centers. And here at DG, I want to indicate that from the National Centre side, we do capacity assessments within the municipalities on an annual basis, where we target a number of them each year, and we provide those reports to the municipalities to improve capacity. But what we also need to indicate, chairperson, is that the capacity of a disaster management center, to large in part, rests within the coordination of other government entities and organs of state in order to be brought together to actually respond. And it's important for us to understand that the disaster management center within the municipality is not tasked with the function of responding to an event. It's actually bringing together the organs of state to develop their disaster management plans, to develop their contingency arrangements, and then to coordinate an integrated response to the disaster. And I think as I say that, perhaps in closing, is to indicate that in many of the municipalities, the disaster capacity can perhaps be improved in terms of the number of individuals. There is some big disparities between the different municipalities in terms of the physical resources that is available for the disaster management center in order to deal with those kind of events. But it is an ongoing aspect, it's an ongoing process. We've seen some improvement in our disaster management plan development, in our minimum infrastructure requirements for our disaster management centers. And we are continuously working with these provincial and the municipal centers to respond and to and to actually reduce the incidence of disasters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jurgens. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to then move on to Pieter Pretorius on the CWP matters.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair and members, Deputy Ministers and DGs and colleagues. I'm responding to the one question by Honourable Seleka on the CWP. So unlike the Expanded Public Works Programme, the CWP is not short-term projects, so there's no requirement for a CWP participant to exit the programme. So as long as the participant is unable to find alternative income opportunities, the participant will remain in CWP, generally working for 2 days a week, and then earning a monthly stipend. So part of what we're trying to do in the new CWP model is actually to change that and to focus more closely on the kind of work that participants do, as well as the relevance of the training being provided to participants to allow them to exit the CWP and find more sustainable income opportunities. But as I indicated, many of the participants have been in the program since the beginning and have not exited. There are cases where participants exit, sometimes temporarily, where they do find temporary employment opportunities, but then eventually come back into the CWP. Our ability then to exit participants is also a function of the economy, and as the economy starts growing again post-COVID, we hope that we will be able, more participants will be able to find permanent employment or alternative employment, which will then also allow us to bring new participants into the program. Thank you, Chair.
DG, are you done?
Thank you, Chairperson. Perhaps there's just two more responses that are required, and maybe just 2 points of clarity. So I just thought I would mention that for the 2019-20 financial year, the department had obtained a qualified audit opinion, and for 2021-22, it's a result or an outcome that we are still awaiting, pending the outcome of the audit. Chair, I had also covered the purpose of the presentation for today. However, we are good to return to the committee to actually provide an update on the achievements against the targets that were set for the department in 2020-2021. Chair, perhaps just to respond to the question that was also raised by Honourable Seleka, just around the DDM and how it is that we see the whole approach around DDM. I think the important point for us to note and raise, firstly, is that we do see it as an all of government and all of society approach, because we believe that, you know, local government is at the epicenter of development. So we do see the DDM as a vessel or an instrument for us to then be able to assist in unblocking some of the service delivery challenges to stabilize local government. However, we are equally very mindful of the fact that within the states of local government, when you look at how we've classified it in terms of governance and administration, in terms of financial management, that all of these need to be at a level where a municipality is also functioning optimally in order to derive the true value of the DDM in terms of its actual approach. The very good thing about it is that at the local space or level is that it will assist us to address the silo issues, specifically around planning, budgeting, and implementation. And of course, we want to also narrow the distance between the people and the government, and we want to then strengthen that coordination, especially when we begin to bring business together and all institutional stakeholders at a local level. So really just also looking at how it is that we engage a citizen differently, but also looking to one of the key pillars that we believe would assist in really dealing with the triple challenge of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. And that is for us really to look at the economic growth pillar that sits within the DDM. So we also thought that, at least I thought that perhaps we should also then come back to the committee just on the smart cities. Where exactly will these be based? We have identified the 3 smart cities. So Chairperson, I just wanted the team to name them because I didn't want to name them incorrectly. I wanted to see if Stephanie had joined the meeting in order to do that, but I believe that she's not in. So Chair, we can come back formally and just confirm the 3 names of the cities. Thank you so much, Chair. I think I would leave it to this.
Thank you very much, DG. Can I take the DG for Traditional Affairs?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, the honorable members. The question raised by the Honorable Sheikh relates to specifics about the anti-GBVF training that we say will be doing. So during the current financial year, we'll be focusing more on the local houses. So as we indicated in one of the slides that on our account, there's only 32 districts in which you will find local houses of traditional leaders. So we'll target those 32 districts and make sure that there is awareness raising, there is workshopping and training on this important area, as the honorable member says. So that's work that we would want to do, which will be broken down into the different quarters of the month to make sure that by the end of the financial year, we have indeed covered all of them. There is also a question that the Honorable Sheikh raised, and you added to that question, Honorable Chair, about the establishment of provincial houses. So at the moment, all provinces have provincial houses with the exception of Gauteng and the Western Cape. And in Gauteng, it was because there's only 2 recognized senior traditional leaders in Gauteng. So it was not going to be practical for the province to establish a separate provincial house where there are only 2 recognized senior traditional leaders. But the arrangement is in the case of Gauteng is that those 2 then become part of the national house, so that for accountability purposes and to make sure that they are not outside the processes of houses of traditional leaders, they are accommodated in the national house. For the Western Cape, Honorable Chair, I think it might really be a timing problem for them. Because as we say in Gauteng, they've got only 2 recognized traditional leaders. In the Western Cape, they didn't have any recognized traditional leaders, although they are those that stood up and said they are Khoi and San leaders. But in terms of legislation, they were not formally recognized. And that was because there was no legislation before that could facilitate the recognition of the Khoi and San leaders until the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act came into effect. So it will be expected that if the Western Cape ends up having recognized Khoi and San leaders, and that the number is it reaches a threshold that enables them to establish the house, that they should establish a house indeed. But first, they have to go through this process of recognition that we mentioned, where the Commission on Khoisan Matters has now already opened up for applications for recognition for Khoi and San leaders. And those that opened up in March of this year. And as they receive applications for recognition of Khoi and San leaders in the Western Cape, and they go through them, investigate, and make recommendations for their recognition. Once they get recognized and they reach that threshold, then that should enable the Western Cape to indeed establish a provincial house. So as I say, Honorable Chair, that it might really just be a timing issue for them, because up until the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act came into effect, they had no legal basis to recognize Khoi and San leaders who can then be the basis for the establishment of a provincial house. Honorable Sheikh also raised the issue about the tools of trade and what are the concerns that traditional leaders have raised. These are concerns that have been raised before, and they relate to basic things that enable them to do their work. So they relate to basic things like vehicles. How do we make sure that they get provided with vehicles so that they can be able to fulfill their responsibilities? How do we make sure that they get provided with support staff, drivers, administrators, and so on, so that their offices can function properly? How do we make sure that they have basic things like mobile communication platforms, cell phones, and so on, with a predictable indication of how much they qualify for in terms of airtime and so on, so that they are able to function? How much do they get allocated for as their budget for administrative purposes, to buy stationery, for traveling, and hosting people as they come to their centers, traditional councils, and so on? So it's those issues, although there are other also pressing issues that they have raised relating to just their conditions of service. For example, that they do not have a pension, and that at a later stage in life, when as a traditional leader, you want to hand over to a successor without necessarily them waiting for you to die first. And so because of age, you want to hand over, you have got nothing to fall back on. So how do these things get dealt with? So it's that package of issues, Honorable Chair, that they are raising for purposes of them being able to fulfill their responsibilities. What has been done in the past was to facilitate the development of a draft handbook, which can then indicate the tools of trade that can be provided to the institution of traditional leadership. The challenge, however, was that ultimately the costs involved will have to be borne by the provinces in particular, and therefore there has to be a very careful consultation process and budgeting process, so that you don't have a handbook that gets signed off at the end of the day, but it can be implemented because it's not supported by a careful costing exercise and an accompanying budgeting process on the part of the provinces. So emanating from those discussions that have taken place with the president and deputy president, there is an interministerial task team that has been established. The interministerial task team will deal with different categories of issues that the institution of traditional leadership has raised, because not all of them are about tools of trade. Others are about other matters like communal land tenure, for example, the finalization, the need to review SPLUMA to provide a role for traditional leadership, and so on and so on. So in that interministerial task team, there is one consisting of ourselves, the presidency, and treasury, that will specifically look at issues relating to resourcing, including this one on tools of trade, so that there can be a consistent set of proposals that can then be consulted on and implemented once they have been approved. That's the commitment that has been made by the president and deputy president, to say this process now is being put on the lapse of the interministerial task team chaired by the Deputy President, and the one on tools of trade will specifically be looked at by this work stream consisting of COPTA, National Treasury, and the Presidency. So that is in terms of the issue of tools of trade, Chair. The Honorable Selegu raised the issue about disputes, and I think it links also to the question that the Honorable Motsamai has raised, and you yourself also, Chairperson, has added on your concerns on the matter of disputes. I think with regard to Northwest in particular, the Honorable Deputy Minister Bapela led a process of engagement with the MEC there to look at a range of issues affecting the sector. And one of the issues that was looked at is this one on the disputes. And they had a table that indicate the different matters of dispute relating to different traditional leadership. And the agreement was that then they should be looked at and categorized and followed up on the basis of particular circumstances that relate to them. So, for example, there are issues where the matter will have served before the Commission on Disputes, and the matter was concluded by the Commission on Disputes, but the other party is still unhappy. In such a situation, then it becomes difficult for government to intervene because of the powers the Commission had, and the fact that only a court of law can then review what the Commission has come up with. There are others, Honorable Chair, as you say, where the work of the Commission was seen as incomplete, and the law provides the authority to the Premier to appoint a committee that can take this work forward and look into it where the matter did not serve before the Commission, but still requires a further investigation. And of course, depending on the outcome of that work, if the other party is still unhappy, then that's where, unfortunately, the courts come in. So that's the work that the province is seized with. But I think that to the extent that, as Honorable Motsamai says, there might be a need of an oversight engagement with the concerned traditional communities, will be guided by the committee chairperson. Of importance would be to ensure that the provincial government is also part of that, because ultimately, whatever the outcome, the sphere of government with the authority to implement will be the provincial government. In our case, the authority relates more with the kingships and queenships. Because the recognition of kings and queens as the authority and competence of the president, whilst the recognition of senior traditional leaders and principal traditional leaders and headmen and headwomen lies with the Premier. So we'll be guided by the committee on that. But as I said, it will be important to make sure that the province is also on board in that process. Honorable Selegu, I think the question also was about litigation, but there was a specific question about how much we're spending in terms of litigation. I think maybe just to qualify the response, that this is in relation to litigation relating to queenships and kingships, because where the litigation is below queenship and kingship, the litigation will primarily be at the level of the province. So the respondent will be the Premier, the respondent will be the MEC, and so on. So it's quite uncommon that where the dispute relates to senior traditional leadership or lower, that you then have the president and the minister being respondents, because in the nature of the legislation, the authority is at the provincial level. So the figures that I'll give the committee here, as I say, these are figures specific to litigation relating to kingships and queenships. So for the 2020-2021 financial year, it was 1.6 million that was spent, where the minister and the president would be cited as respondents. And for the year we've just closed now, although the figures are still subject to auditing by the AG, but the figures we have right now is 1.8 million spent on litigation. I think I've covered the questions that the honourable members have raised, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, there's one that I just want to add to the DG, if allowed. Yes, Honourable Deputy Minister. Thank you very much. It's a question that was raised by Honourable Mutsamai also around the Baga Pafani community. I did meet with them for half a day, trying to understand the entire documentations that they have, including signature or no signature on the handing of the land that is occupied by Bafokeng currently, which was supposed to have been signed as a handover between the Paul Kruger and then whoever was the chief or king of Bafokeng at the time. But the land obviously does belong to Bapafani. They found them there, but there was money exchange for them to get the land that they are in now. It's correct that the Bapafani have now since raised the matter, but it does not fall squarely in the Department of Traditional Affairs. It is a land matter, so we have referred the matter to the land affairs because they are the ones who are holding any communal land in trust on behalf of communities throughout the country. So we had asked and advised Baga Pafani to then lodge with the department and then process the matter until, if they are not happy, they can even go to court for that particular matter, because they seems to have very good records that indicates otherwise, but it is not within DTA at this stage. And I think if there's any follow-up, it can then be made with the Department of Land Affairs. And on the Bakhatla Bakhafela, as the DG has explained, it's a matter that it's in the province. They are the ones who are investigating it through the office of the Premier and also the COGTA office in the province. They've appointed an administrator, I know, and to the displeasure of the other community, which is in South Africa based, and yet the person appointed was supposed to be taking over is from Botswana, but they are one community divided by the border, and then this investigation the province has not yet concluded, hence the administrator, so that they can then go deeper into it. We can't enter that space as national until the matter is escalated to us, but we will be seeing the developments. And I think some oversight visit by the portfolio, by the select committee can then happen, but we will also be engaging and then seeing what progress is made to finalize the dispute in that particular issue. Some of the disputes that we see is family disputes, but some now are new, which are relating to natural resources. The Bakhatla Bakhafela in the main is the mining resources that are there in that particular area, and then quite a number of other communities across the country. It will be mining, it will be agriculture. Whenever they are not happy with whoever, or there's a chief is in place, there will be another family member who says, no, but that is not the rightful one. So you find out these disputes, most of them are new. They are no longer about whether they are a community or not a community, because that wasn't Tlapo Commission did for kings and traditional leaders. Even those provincial commissions that were established, it was trying to complete whatever Tlapo could not complete, and they had completed all the work. But the new disputes that are arising is as a result of now who is the rightful heir to the throne, rather than whether they are an established community or not an established community. But obviously, these are the things that we're seeing now developing. We'll have to then, as a department, continuously observe, engage, and probably if these disputes become too many and too heavy for provinces, the older mechanisms of resolving disputes might then have to be reinstituted, but obviously will be guided by the minister and also what the law says. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DM. Let's go to Misa. Misa, very quickly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. I will respond to a few questions, Chair. One from Honorable Zanda Mela. It was not a question. He requested a breakdown of municipalities to be supported per province. We have since submitted the breakdown, Chair, through the committee secretary. And also, Honorable Sheikh also requested the same information, which we have provided. And then there was also a question from Honorable Sheikh with regard to the insufficient budget and whether are there cost containment measures. If I may respond, Chair, the insufficient budget that we spoke about in the main relate to the new assignment around the coordination of the Eastern Seaboard development, which I indicated, Chair, that the department is actually considering additional resourcing for MISA to coordinate that function. So there is not really a challenge of shortfall per se. And also, Honorable Silegu asked a question, how do we support municipalities, what they write to us, and also, of course, the question of underspending. In response to how MISA support municipalities, one, we have what we call a district support teams. So in all the districts, we have got teams of technical personnel deployed, supporting a number of prioritized municipalities within a particular district. How do we select those municipalities? It's through a combination of an assessment that is done by DCOG, MISA, as well as National Treasury, but also municipalities, they do write to MISA for specific requests, and then we respond. So that's how we then support Chair. But we are in almost all the MIG receiving municipalities, we do support them. And in terms of spending, Chair, if you check our plan and the plan of the department for the previous financial year, we have a target of 85% expenditure of MIG, and we spent 91% at the end of June 2021, and we are currently sitting above 60% of expenditure. And MISA is there supporting all those municipalities to spend MIG appropriately. And then there was another question, Chair, with regard to infrastructure rollover. That Chair spoke to in the main to the presidential employment stimulus funding that was allocated to MISA late in the financial year last year. So we were given 284 million in December last year. And so we've made a request to retain that money. So it's the money that I did not we did not necessarily reflect in our allocation for this financial year. So we're implementing that particular program. On your question, Chair, regarding the 64 dysfunctional municipalities and the support that MISA is providing, yes, we are part of a team that is supporting those 64 municipalities, Chair. And we will provide a report as you have requested, Chair, in terms of the detail, in terms of the support that has been provided and is still being provided. Thank you very much. I think I've covered all questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the responses. In the interest of time, we are not going to answer any questions pertaining to the disasters in especially KZN, Eastern Cape, and in the Northwest, as we indicated. The matter will be dealt with extensively by the ad hoc joint ad hoc committee between the NA and the NCOP. With that, can I invite honorable deputy ministers in an overarching way to have a word to address some of the issues? Over to you, Honorable Nkadim.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And let me appreciate the team led by the DG under administration for the responses that have been made. The CEO of MISA as well, DG Traditional Affairs. Chair, I want to take time. I think the questions were sufficiently responded to. Suffice to say, there was a request of additional information, which the DG has also articulated to and will be submitted. I just wanted to deal with 2 or 3 issues quickly. There was one question which was directed to me with regard to professionalizing of the local government as a sector. And just briefly indicate, without outlining all the programs that we could possibly in writing do to the members, indicate that it takes a twofold. There's a support that is given to administration where there are professional requirements needed for a particular job that you need to apply for in a municipality with clear requirements. Competencies, Memabi Dilala might have not expatiated, but the department has assisted the municipalities with the setting up of competencies, particularly for the director positions, but also the managers that subsequently report to the directors, with an intention of rolling out the performance management system in municipalities beyond the section 56 and 57. And then there are programs which are run by the department, LG SITA, and municipalities and SALGA to ensure that there's capacity development with regard to councillors who are public office bearers. A various number of programs that are rolled out, including programs, Honorable Chair, that are accredited by institutions of higher learning, which means our upper limits from the 2 previous financial years have been allowing councillors to register with recognized institutions of higher learning for various developmental programs so that they also become equipped even beyond their lives as councillors. So this is what this professionalizing is all about. But as Salga previously had indicated, it also needs a participation and collaboration from parties on who do they forward. There are some councillors who then do not qualify, for example, for any course in an institution of higher learning. We usually gap that with the certificates and gap that with our TVET training. But political parties also need to play the part. The second last part talks to the MPEC role and training. I'll specifically, the minister did not touch on it, but it's a program which we have started at the beginning of this term together with the National School of Government and SALGA, the training of all MPEC committees, starting with their chairpersons and then the 9 committee members, to ensure that the first ethical code which is signed in terms of enhancement of MPEC establishment and committees in municipalities. 1, it's mandatory. You will know some municipalities will not have MPECs or will sometimes not even sit. 2, it's mandatory for councils to submit their Section 52 reports on a quarterly basis to MPEC for further interrogation. It's mandatory for the chair of MPEC to submit those reports or a response back to council after the assessment. In our circular at the beginning of the term of the new councillors or the new council, we indicated that we need to make sure that all chairpersons undergo the training, municipalities forward them to the training, but also ensure that such reports will be handed in. This also ties in with regard to the separation of powers, which have also been attached with regard to the office of the speaker and their roles and responsibilities. In what are they responsible, and ensuring that gets to be tabulated on a quarterly basis in council. So we hope that this will assist broadly in dealing with the issue of ensuring that we retain the skill, we are accountable in municipalities, but we also are able to respond appropriately by ensuring that our communities receive the services they need. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker or Chair. With that being said, it's what I wanted to add. Don't laugh, Honorable Bapela. Thank you very much.
I was laughing, promoting Dodovo to speaker.
Yeah. Honorable Bapela, anything that you want to raise further? Or you
No,
okay?
no, Chair, it's just really to amplify and agree with you that some of the questions raised obviously are not within the reports that were presented in the APP and the budgets here. However, they are quite substantive, useful, and then we did answer to majority of them. But as you said that at some point you might then invite any of the departments here to come and give a substantive report on some of the progress challenges that we might be facing along the way. We will welcome such an invitation at any given time. Thank you very much. My DM has covered me well, Chairperson. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That is that, honorable members. We have come to the end of the engagement. Thanking very much the Honorable Minister in absentia, as well as her deputies, Honorable Bapela and Honorable Nkadim. Thank you very much that you are always available to attend our engagements, to be with us, to share information. We greatly appreciate that from you. Thank you very much, the DTGs and the CEO of MISA for attending this, as well as all other officials. We have now received the full reports on the APP and the budget. We are going to consider this in the next meeting where we are going to decide to adopt the reports or not, but I don't anticipate any problems in that regard. With all of that, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and bye.
Yes, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And honorable members, and goodbye.
Thank you, goodbye.
Thank you, Chair, and honorable members and colleagues.
Yes. I know. I need to. Recording stopped.